Thank you for joining me here today for the ETEP Online Training Series Module number 5. And I'm going to dive right in. This is the same disclaimer that you always see that just states that I'm not the EPA. I'm not actually going to go through a full course overview. I mean, you've seen this for the most part. I'll just kind of scan through these real quick. Um, Probably should have just deleted them. We're at Module 5 today. Next module, we're going to focus on preparing and finalizing a complete ETEP, getting to those other components. And then Module 7 will be about utilizing, reviewing, and updating your ETEP and strategic plan. And then Module 8 will be a question and answer session, and then there'll probably be some additional walkthroughs in that session as well. Okay, so starting in this agenda, or I'm sorry, in this module, I will briefly again just reiterate the resources and logistics. We're going to cover strategic planning development. We're going through the strategic planning process today, developing a mission, vision, values, goals for your department, and also conducting a SWOT analysis. And I'm going to go through some additional strategic planning considerations and resources that are available to you to help you in this process. And if there's time at the end, which I believe there will be, I'm going to continue walking through the ETEP development process, which I've been doing toward the end of the last few modules, because I just think the more you see that, the more helpful that it'll be. And then I'm going to conclude with the assignments and next steps, and also hope that you will take the time to complete the post-webinar evaluation to give me feedback. Okay, so just for the resource and logistics, in terms of scheduling, I'm doing, as you've been able to tell, I've been able to pick up the pace on these modules. So I am already had the doodle poll out for module number 6 and plan on holding that module next week. So if you have not responded to that, please do. I think I've only gotten 2 responses so far on for next week. So please let me know. I'm going to select a date by the end of Friday, so by the end of tomorrow. I will send another reminder of that tomorrow morning, but you should have a link for that already. And then you have access to the videos and the resources online. In the latest round of assignments that I emailed out, I did change the passwords and links again. So just make sure that you're looking at the latest email for those to make sure that you have access. And if you have any problems accessing any of those things, just send me an email, let me know. And I will continue the ongoing assignments, the ongoing email reminders of the assignments and to register and complete the doodle polls. All right, so I'm going to dive right into strategic planning. I like to, if anybody's been sending my presentations in the past on strategic planning, you may recognize this one. But I think strategic planning and really the whole process of strategic planning and management can be represented through the visual I'm about to provide. And an ETEP is a strategic work plan, and I'll describe how these relate in a few moments. But really, the ETEP is what allows you to flesh out the details and implement your overarching strategic plan. So um, let's say that you're an organization that's represented by this blue dot right here. And in this situation, you don't actually have a strategic plan. So an organization that is this blue dot will tend to take a pattern or may go in a pattern like this. It's going to start at A, which is just, wherever the organization is at any given point in time. So right now we're at point A. And from there, the organization kind of really moves along, reacts to new funding opportunities, maybe something that the chairperson asks somebody to do. Some issue comes up out there that, one of the residents in the community complains about illegal dumping going on near their place. I've even had people complaining about us bringing on mulch that smelled like toxic odor, which was just the smell of the mulch or whatever. So anyways, after a period of time without a strategic plan, you'll end up at an arbitrary point we're going to call X. And this may be the pattern that you end up taking. So without a strategic plan, you end up bouncing on a lot. So there's no rhyme or reason to the pattern of the direction of that you're going. So instead, you're going in this direction, like it just you're reactive. Really, this is a reactive pattern. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's nothing driving you to get to where you want to be. And X really is not really a goal. It's just where you ended up at any given moment in time. And let's map out this pattern and say that over this period of time, which we can call maybe a year, you've exerted 1,200 units of a given resource. So that may be time, it may be money, uh, it, whatever it is. So an organization that has a strategic plan is going to be starting at the same point, so point A, and through the strategic planning process is going to identify goals. And so in this case, one of the goals that this organization has identified is going to be represented by B. So with the strategic plan, the organization actually has a target to strive towards. So the resources, the time, the energy, the effort is going to be spent in going toward B. And as you noticed, the pattern wasn't a straight line. In the real world, we're not able to just directly go straight to our goals. We still are somewhat reactive, but for the most part, we are going in the general direction of an intended goal. So this is more like what the pattern will look like. And let's say over a given period of time, let's say a year, if you have a goal that you've established, instead of spending 1,200 units and going towards some arbitrary endpoint, you spend 800 units, so less units of money, of time, of resources, and you end up going toward a goal that you've determined that you actually want to reach, which is B. So what I like to advocate, what I've been kind of advocating throughout this course, is having a living strategic plan. So you are starting at point A, and through a strategic planning process, which is also what the ETEP process is a part of, is you end up identifying your goal. In this case, is point B. And in this case, with a living strategic plan, you follow on the same path, and then at a moment in time, you will decide to reevaluate your goals. So in going through the process of reevaluating your goals, you determine that you have a new goal, which is C instead of B. There's been a change in the regulations, so EPA has issued, I guess a really good example would be EPA issued new gap guidance. So the old gap guidance and the old goals were developed under the old gap guidance, and the new goal of C was developed under the new gap guidance. So it just changes the trajectory and the end point of where you want to end up at. So in this case, you end up pivoting, and then you start going toward this new goal. And in this case, you may spend a little more money getting there over the same period of time, but you also did not end up at the wrong place. So if you had not reevaluated where you wanted to go until you reached B, then it would actually taken you maybe 100 or 150 more units to actually get to where C is. So your mission, vision, values. So just to step back, like we're talking about strategic plan, which is your mission, vision, values, and goals. The overarching strategic plan for your department, your organization, is that guidance. It's the overarching guidance that tells you where you want to go. And so you're probably familiar with these concepts, so I don't really have to go into too much depth, and you could do more research on them. But really, the mission of your organization is the purpose. And you typically want it to be clear and concise, and that purpose is going to guide the decisions about the priorities, the activities, the roles, responsibilities of everything that you have going on. Everybody involved, your resources, the direction you're going, should be guided by the purpose that you hopefully can articulate. Your vision, on the other hand, you may have heard the concept of having a vision. This is very similar to a mission, but it's really more associated with the why of the organization. The mission is like the how and the what, perhaps the who. I like to think of the vision as the why. So a vision is represented or typically articulated as an ultimate state of success. What change do you see occurring in the world as a result of fulfilling the mission? So I'll provide some examples of what mean in a moment. Uh, your vision may be tied to your organization or a change in the world or both. So your vision is a future state. So if you are ultimately successful in accomplishing your mission, what would be the change? What would be the change of the state? What would be the actual state of the world or the organization itself? Your core values are going to be the shared principles and beliefs that guide your behavior. Another way of looking at those is saying how things are done around here. And these are what guide the people who are involved. The ones that, so it's not necessarily the core values of, of the entire world. It's just, or even the community you serve. It's actually the core values of the people working within and on the organization itself. So this will be your staff member, your stakeholders, those who are involved in the day-to-day. And you want these core values to be able to guide your staff members in how they're operating. But you usually want to start from a place of where these core values already are, and then you may actually develop some aspirational core values. So as an example of a mission, Prosper Sustainably's mission is to help individuals, organizations, and communities clarify, pursue, and fulfill their unique potential. Um, that vision is fairly broad. It's I do my work right now predominantly with tribes, but I do anticipate evolving into doing with other organizations and even doing individual coaching. And so I've made a vision that's broad enough to allow me to kind of pivot and do more than what I'm currently doing right now. My vision, the Prosper Sustainably's vision, is widespread empowerment, harmony, and genuineness throughout the world as a result of the majority of individuals, organizations, and communities taking meaningful steps toward fulfilling their unique potential. Again, this is, it's very high level. It's broader than probably what I'm doing right now, which is a consideration. So, if I'm going to go back and look at my mission and my vision on an annual basis, I may want to consider, okay, these are very high level. These are very broad. They encompass other organizations. They encompass individuals. They 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 go way beyond what I'm currently doing right now. Does it make sense for Prosper Sustainably to fulfill this larger mission and vision, or would it make sense for me to create a different organization or a sub-organization that does something broader or maybe focuses on individuals or other organizations beyond Native American tribes? Your SWOT analysis is going to be the look at your organization, and what the SWOT analysis stands for is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you want to look at where your organization currently stands and do this periodically. So your strengths are going to be your internal and existing advantages. What do you do well? What can you leverage moving forward? Your weaknesses are going to be your internal and existing disadvantages. So what don't you do well? What may be areas that are opportunities for improvement? And then kind of the flip side of maybe your weaknesses might be some opportunities, but really these are going to be focused on your external and potential advantages. So what do you have as an advantage over other organizations out there doing the same thing? What are some opportunities that are presenting themselves right now? So maybe funding opportunities, things that are occurring out there in the real world. So actually, let me rephrase that. Your strength would be something that you do very well. So let's say you have really good staff who have a lot of skills. They're very good. You have you have a waste technician who's very knowledgeable. You have a water quality specialist, natural resources specialist. They're talented, they're skilled. You feel like you can accomplish a lot with them. An opportunity would be something external, so it'd be like a funding source. So um, there's a new funding source out there that allows you to get some climate change planning funding. So that's a potential advantage for your organization. Threats are going to be external disadvantages. So something might be a threat. An example of a threat may be a change in the Clean Air Act regulations. So a recent one a couple years back, the EPA issued new tribal minor new source regulations, which made it so that minor sources needed to get possibly need to get permits. And the disadvantage of that is that, an entity that may not, or an activity that the tribe may have been doing that wasn't regulated before may now be regulated, and it may involve going through a permitting process. It may involve new costs, or you may find out that the way it's operating right now is not actually legal. So you may have to either stop doing it or retrofit the activity or the source so that it does comply. Another example under the Clean Air Act just might be that the emission standards, so the ambient air quality standards, uh, and the associated requirements. So let's say particulate matter 2.5, that the standards of that were made stricter. So if you had some emissions that were just at the threshold right now, the stricter standards mean that you need to now meet more stringent standards and perhaps do the same thing, install new technology, or not do the activity anymore. And then there are your goals and your program areas, and these should be familiar to you. Well, these are essentially part of the ETEP strategic work plans we've been working on already. We've already been focusing on developing these, so I won't go into them in too much detail. But you may want to distinguish your kind of overall goals for your organization, which guide your department as a whole, versus the program-specific goals. And then you have your program areas. So these are the business, the functional or operational units. They may be a division or just a specific area. I've provided examples of what these could be for your department. And these can be found in the ETEP catalog that I made available online. I've been using them in my examples as well. And so we've covered these before, but you can look at these in different ways. And then you'll have the program area goals that are associated with each specific program area. Your ETEP strategic work plan is really going to be how you're going to implement the strategic plan. It's going to be the nitty gritty. It's going to be the specific action steps, really. It's called a strategic work plan because it's a work plan for the overarching strategy that's guided by that strategy. So the strategic plan itself provides the overall direction and guidance. You'll use it to make larger decisions on things. When you're deciding on new objectives, you want to do that in the context of the overarching mission, vision, values, and the goals. So it'll allow you to evaluate these issues, these opportunities, these needs and objectives, and decide whether and how you want to pursue them. The strategic work plan itself is going to be the blueprint for implementing that strategic plan, providing that specific direction and guidance by program area, and the series of major objectives with specific time frames. So, you don't want to get to the task level with a strategic work plan. You really want, I would say, annual objectives, in that your specific time frame is really accomplishing something within a given year. So, a major objective would be something that developing an integrated solid waste management plan. That would be a major objective that you could accomplish within a given year. And then that strategic work plan is going to allow you to track and measure progress, performance, and achievements. So you're going to see your objectives. You're going to be able to evaluate whether or not you're accomplishing them, and be able to change those as well. And then understanding and allocating your resources and accomplishing those objectives. So what funding you have available to accomplish them, what personnel you have, and whether or not they have the time to actually accomplish these objectives. And really the ETEP strategic work plan allows you to, especially as a director or a program manager, allows you to oversee all organizational activities and adjust your direction as needed. And then the level of detail and specificity within your ETEP strategic work plan, or your strategic work plan, is going to vary from organization to organization. It really needs to be crafted by you with your staff members and stakeholders to figure out where to go. We've covered a lot of these, the elements themselves, and going through the ETEP strategic work plan in prior modules, but you have your objectives and milestones. And you also want to keep track of possible objectives. So each one you'll have within a specific time frame, which what I've advocated doing is having a specific year associated with each objective, and then if it's an objective that you're not sure you want to pursue within the time frame of the strategic work plan, then list it as a possible activity that you can continuously evaluate and decide whether or not you want to include. You can also include performance metrics, outputs and deliverables. You can associate financial resources, so whether or not you have funding available and how much funding you have available for each objective. Your personnel resources, so what staff members are going to work on the objectives, those roles and responsibilities, and perhaps maybe even agency roles and responsibilities. And then you can also associate an urgency or status. And the essential elements are really just going to be the objectives and the time frame. The rest of these are going to be more optional. And we've gone through all of these in detail. These are all options you have for ETEP Strategic Work Plan, and some of these are going to be requirements for the fulfilling your ETEP requirements for the EPA. Okay, so I really went over the whole process of developing a strategic plan, the elements strategic plan, at a higher level, because I just really this course is focused on developing your ETEP, and I think the strategic planning process itself complements the ETEP. So kind of going back here a little bit and seeing the overview of how these two relate. I think it's important for you to consider going through a strategic planning process while developing your ETEP, just because it's going to help you develop those goals. It's going to help you develop those targets that you can make sure that when you're spending the time and the resources accomplishing things, you want to make sure you're spending them these time and resources as efficiently, as effectively as possible. And having a strategic plan helps you make sure that you are maintaining a certain focus, and then with that focus that you maintain alignment and going where you want to go, where the tribe wants to go. So the part of the strategic planning process is going to be identifying where the tribe wants to go with the environmental department, with its initiatives and programs. Okay, so let me walk you through what the strategic planning process is. So the first thing is going to be that you will want to do is understanding where the environmental department is at right now, and that can involve conducting an environmental needs assessment, either an informal or formal needs assessment to just see identifying what are the what are the priority issues, the opportunities, where are the needs, where are the programmatic needs, what are the environmental needs out there. And we've covered what going through doing an environmental needs assessment actually involves, but that's a very good starting spot, and it's part of the process of developing your ETEP anyways. Another thing you can do is what I think you should do before undertaking the full strategic planning process is the initial preparation of your ETEP strategic work plan. So my suggestion is to complete your draft ETEP strategic work plan, and that's just component number one, focusing on the tribe's programs and priorities before proceeding with the remainder of the strategic planning process that I'm going to go through in a moment, in order to maximize the effort, because this will allow staff and stakeholders to discuss possible goals and objectives rather than having to come up with these from scratch. So if you start doing the strategic planning process, going through your mission, vision, values, and goals, you do a strategic planning retreat before having a draft ETEP, you may find that it ends up being a bit of an exercise in futility, because you're going to have a clean slate. You're going to ask people to come up with lots of different ideas, which can be a valuable brainstorming session, but it's not a valuable strategy session per se. So you want people to already have some context. You want there to be something to work off of rather than a clean slate, because you'll find yourself kind of going off in tangents, which are, your office is already working on specific things right now, and you don't want to deviate. You don't want discussions that are dramatically different from where you are at right now. And so doing the strategic planning process without having done preparing a draft ETEP strategic work plan could allow you to go off in a different direction. So one thing you can do, you can start doing right now that you don't necessarily need to wait before doing your strategic planning workshop or retreat, whatever you want to call it, is circulating a questionnaire on potential mission, vision, values, and goals. And so with this, you'll probably want to focus on your staff, but you can also include tribal leadership and other stakeholders. And this is really an information gathering process. So I'll provide you with a sample, but let's kind of walk through this a little bit more. So this questionnaire is going to be for either creating a new strategic plan or revising an existing strategic plan. And it's an information gathering process. So the results themselves aren't going to just be easily cut and paste into the new strategic plan, but it'll help inform you in doing that in the new development or revision process. So in working with tribes, I've developed a questionnaire using SurveyMonkey. And what I've done is I've created a link that's just a standard plan that can be used by anybody. And so that link is available to you. So if you go on this, I'll send it an email afterwards as well. So if you click on this link, it'll pull up a SurveyMonkey survey, and then you can yourself and your staff members and whoever else you want from your organization fill out this survey, and this walks you through what you want to be thinking about. So I'm going to walk you through this survey because I think it'll help kind of reiterate what the strategic planning process is and what it involves. So the first question is about developing, or the first series of questions focuses on developing a mission statement. So in this case, it says that a mission statement clearly and concisely describes the purpose of your department and guides decisions about priorities, activities, roles, and responsibilities. And it asks the people doing the survey to respond to the prompts to help create or revise the environmental department's mission statement. So I want to say, create or revise, because you already may have a mission statement, and it's still useful going through this questionnaire because there may need to be some revisions to that mission statement. So, but it asks the questions of getting to the heart of what should be in the mission statement. So this first one is, what is the purpose and function of what this department is and what it does? How does the department do what it does? Why does it exist? Who and or what does the department serve? How does it benefit and help those that it serves? What is this department particularly excellent at doing or being? And then it asks people to actually state the department's mission statement. It gives them an opportunity to state the department's mission statement in a way that may differ if you don't have a mission statement, or a way that may differ from the existing mission statement. And you may find that you may have a mission statement and you send out this questionnaire and people are not actually aware that you have a mission statement. This is a good opportunity for people to take a crack at it. And you may find that somebody may actually craft a very, a good starting point for you in developing your own mission statement. And then it provides an opportunity for additional information. So the second series of questions focuses on a vision and asks people focuses on describing what the department ultimately wants to achieve for the long term, and asks people to describe to the prompts to either create or revise the vision statement. So the questions here are, if the department is 100% successful, what does the world look like? And then if the department is 100% successful, how will this impact who and or what the department is attempting to serve? So, the vision is about why. Who are you serving? How are you going to serve them? What is the world? How is the world going to change if you are successful? It asks what are the department's highest goals? How should ultimate success by the department be measured? How does the department make the world a better place? And when you are inspired, or when are you inspired by the work you do through the department? So it's really, it's about motivation, it's about inspiration, and these series of questions will help kind of get information from people on why they're there, what they're doing, what's motivating you all, what you were trying to accomplish in the world. For the next two questions are about core values, and I've decided to kind of I think there might be three questions, so no, two questions on core values. So the first one focuses on personal core values. And so in this case, it says core values are beliefs and principles that guide actions, behaviors, communications, and relationships. The first series of questions or prompts focuses on personal core values, uh, personal and professional core values. So these are more individual ones. So individually, what core values do you have both personally and professionally, and how you do your job? The next set of prompts is about the organization. So what core values do you believe that the environmental department um, already holds to, adheres to, that they operate by? One thing you may want to ask too, I didn't include in here, are, this is about existing core values. And so one thing about values is they shape the culture of your organization. And so you may say that your organization, you may say that one of your organization's core values is teamwork, that everybody works together. We value each other's input on things. We believe that working together makes it so that we can accomplish our job more effectively. So that would be a core value that your department may have. So you want to include that as an existing core value if that is actually happening. So you don't want to include that if it's not actually happening. So if people are working in silos, people are resistant to working toward one another, and you are not actually doing what you're not actually uh, using teamwork on a regular basis and how you're operating with one another. You don't want to include that as an existing core value because that would actually tell your organization, tell your staff that you don't do what you say. And so there should be some kind of discussion, okay, we value teamwork, or we say we value teamwork, but in going through our SWOT analysis, perhaps we've identified that we don't actually work very effectively together. We tend to work very independently on projects. We don't communicate what we're working on too much, and that's a weakness of ours. So you may want to say, well, that's an aspirational core value. That's an aspirational value instead. We want to work toward how can we work on that? How can we develop objectives to make sure we can strengthen the level of teamwork that occurs within our organization? So number 5 is about long-term goals, and these are what your department is striving to accomplish over the years to come and beyond, and asks for a series of 4 to 6 long-term goals. So the first one focuses on the general non-program specific goals, so overarching goals, and then number 6 focuses on program specific goals. And I find that when people answer the goals question, I may get some objectives in here as well, and that's fine. The objectives are really sub goals, and that's perfectly fine. It's all still valuable information. And so one thing you may want to do is kind of clarify what these things mean. 7 asks about what people see as being the department's strengths. So the existing internal advantages the organization already possesses, and asks people to list 3 to 6. And then weaknesses are going to be the internal existing disadvantages. The next series is on opportunities, so those external advantages, and then the threats, those external disadvantages. So I've included within this survey that you all can complete follow-up information. So I've created this survey. You could actually recreate it in SurveyMonkey on your own and distribute it to your staff. But if you don't want to go through that process, you're welcome to use mine and share it with others. What I will do is if somebody completes the survey, if you complete the survey or somebody completes the survey, the results will come to me. I will just I will print and forward I will save the results as a PDF and forward them along to you so that you have them and can use them in your strategic planning process. What I have also done, so I will make that as an opportunity at least through April 30th. I currently have a premium version of SurveyMonkey right now that I'm paying for. After April 30th, I think it's going to go back to being the basic version. You can do most of that. The limitation on SurveyMonkey between the premium versus the basic version is that you can only do 10 questions in the basic version, and you can do more than that. So my questionnaire has 11 questions, which wouldn't be allowed. It also has some ability to export the results as as Excel files and other files where you can kind of more analyze and compare the results. But I will forward the individual results to you. Another thing is, and this is open to anybody within an organization. So you can forward this link along, have people complete the survey, and this will be good information for you in your strategic planning process. There also is a PDF version of this questionnaire available in the Google Drive resources folder, so that may be easier for you. And I can pull this up real quick to show you that. So if you're in the Google Drive, you go down here, and you'll see I think it's this one right here, the sample strategic planning questionnaire. I'll just pull that up real quick. It actually, if you download it, it'll be a fillable PDF that you can enter information into, and I can actually show you that as well. So you'll have one that looks like this, and people can enter information and save it. I think they can save it. I have Acrobat, so I can save the entered information. So this is all the questions in the PDF format. I noticed a typo. I'm going to change that when I go and revise the questionnaire after this webinar. But so that's available to you as a resource. Okay, so my recommendation in doing your strategic planning process is, just to reiterate, is first starting with a baseline needs assessment, and then drafting your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. So focusing on component number 1 of the ETEP requirements, at least preparing a draft so you have some context with which to work from, with which to communicate so people aren't going off on tangents. At the same time, you can also circulate this questionnaire that I just prepared for you. And then once you have all of these completed, you have the results back from these things as well, then my recommendation is to conduct a strategic planning meeting and or retreat. It can be helpful to have a third-party facilitator as part of that retreat. So, as a director, I don't think it's actually a good idea for you to serve as a facilitator of a strategic planning meeting or retreat, because if you do, you're inevitably going to influence the process. You're going to influence the process anyways. Your ideas are probably going to carry more weight with your staff members. But if you are not serving in the role of facilitator, you won't overly influence people's perspectives. So you can, it'll be emphasized that you are participating as a participant and not the facilitator. And so, one thing you can do is you can hire somebody to do this. This is something that I do, but if you don't have the resources to hire an outside party to do facilitation for you in a strategic planning retreat, then you can even go to somebody from a different department. So maybe another director who is not involved in things and who you believe could manage this process well. And go through the process of asking questions and providing prompts on identifying what, and discussing what are the mission, vision, values, and goals of your organization. Have you do a SWOT analysis. Though when I do these retreats, I will focus on each of these individually. When I get to the goals and objectives, I will then go to that draft ETEP Strategic Work Plan, and I will present those to the participants, have them review them. I'll try to actually circulate these things ahead of time. If there are drafts of these things, I'll circulate them ahead of time, ask people to review them, consider their feedback. And then when everybody's in the room together, we can look at all these things together at one time, and people can come up with ideas. They can see what's going on, what other people are working on as well. I tend to stagger these with individual breakout and then group exercises. So in considering the mission, I'll have people spend a minute or so considering it individually. Then I'll have them maybe get in a pair or a trio, and then to discuss the mission, the vision, values, SWOT analysis, the goals and objectives, and then coming back after each session and discussing it together as a group. I'll have somebody recording the ideas, the findings that come about through this process. But what I also do that I recommend doing as well is having each participant come in with a notepad. So it's hard to capture everybody's ideas. People are going to be throwing out lots of ideas throughout the entire time. So as people are going through the process, especially in the individual and the breakout sessions, to record their ideas, and that way there's a written record of all the ideas. So um, one of the problems in doing these types of meetings, or really any type of kind of group meeting, is that you're going to have people who are going to be more willing to speak up. You're going to have more dominant personalities, and you're going to have people who are going to be less, who tend to be on the quieter side and a little more passive. But they have just as good of ideas. The problem is those ideas tend to get suppressed by the more dominant, louder people in the room. So by making sure that everybody's recording their ideas and emphasizing that everybody's ideas will be considered, you make sure that those people who are quieter have a voice. You make sure that their ideas are going to be considered, their ideas are going to be recognized. And so, I emphasize that throughout the entire retreat, in between every single, or before every single session, that people record their ideas so we don't lose them. You can decide to include your tribal council or other stakeholders in your strategic planning meetings or retreats, or you can meet with them separately. So I've done it both. So it really depends on the availability of those stakeholders in the tribal council, how involved they want to be, what issues they're involved in. So if you have stakeholders who are involved in every aspect of the environmental department, then you may want to have them there for the entire retreat. If they're only involved in, like, let's say your air quality related issues, you may just want to do a separate meeting with them that just focuses on your air related goals and objectives. And maybe do a SWOT analysis with them just focused on that particular program area. And I find in most cases your tribal council probably is not going to do a day-long retreat, but I've also worked with some very small tribes who, everybody there wears, I think everybody tribe wears numerous hats, but in some cases, some tribes that are in the single digits, and their tribal council is one person, and their environmental director is wearing not just the environmental director hat, but it's wearing tons and tons of hats. So you may, actually have your tribal council involved in the full meeting. But including those other people is how and whether to include them depends on your tribe's circumstances. So after you've gathered the information from the baseline needs assessment, you prepared the draft ETEP, you prepared your draft ETEP strategic work plan, you've gathered the results of the questionnaire, you've gathered the results of the strategic planning retreat. So one thing I kind of skip here is making sure you then go back, you organize these results, you analyze these results, and then you're going to be drafting your strategic plan. So your mission, visions, values, and goals. I'll provide you an example of this in a moment. And then after you drafted that document, which is much shorter than your strategic work plan, you want to circulate it among the people who are involved, and then also other people who weren't involved that you want to get feedback from. So definitely, your staff and stakeholders, you want to get their feedback and input, including your executive committee, your tribal council, and then taking that feedback and then finalizing the plan. You may have to repeat that process depending on, so you may want to get the initial feedback, you may want to revise it and then submit the revision, and then there may be additional feedback, you want to do it again. I recommend not doing that too many times. I advocate having a living plan anyways, which you should be updating at least annually. So I think really kind of one round of revising and recirculating should be more than enough. And then finalizing your strategic plan and your ETEP strategic work plan. And the ETEP strategic work plan process we've been covering all throughout this course. And then from there, you're going to be utilizing your ETEP strategic work plan as a management tool. You want to review and update your strategic work plan at least annually. And then you also want to review and update your strategic plan, I would say, at least annually as well. You want to review your strategic plan at least annually, and you want to update it at least every 5 years. I would say, review it at least annually. You may, with your ETEP, with your strategic work plan, you may be updating that on an ongoing basis. So sorry if I just mixed that up. So strategic plan, review annually, update every 1 to 5 years. Strategic work plan, you're going to review and update at least annually, and you may do it much more frequently that, maybe even monthly and quarterly. So a little on implementation. We're going to get more into this in into I think module 7. Yeah, we're going to be covering this in module 7. So I'm really, everything I'm talking about here is focused on developing a living strategic plan and work plan. These should evolve over time as they're put into practice. Priorities, circumstances, staffing, funding, all these things are going to change over time, so your objectives and goals should be changing as well. You want to be updating and utilizing these on an ongoing basis. As I've already mentioned in prior modules, you want to have a 4 to 5 year strategic work plan that's perpetual, so that you are always covering the next upcoming 4 to 5 years, and you are reviewing and updating these annually. Archiving the year just passed, and then just adding a year the next year each year. So, and then revising the years in between is really the process in a nutshell. And then you have the ability to customize your strategic work plan as well and run reports. And you can adjust your work plan based on those reports. So it might be like a staffing report you run to decide how much time you can allocate to every objective. And then your strategic plan is really kind of the same thing, reviewing that at least annually, and then doing an in-depth review and revision every 4 to 5 years. Using your strategic plan is going to be considering new objectives and goals in the context of your mission, vision, values, and SWOT analysis. So it's really going to guide your strategic work plan. And it'll help you communicate what your department does. So if people aren't clear both internally and externally, so your staff members may not. I mean, I find this happens in lots of organizations. Is not everybody's on the same page. People aren't sure exactly what the purpose of the department is. I mean, sure, we're a tribal environmental department. We work on environmental issues for the tribe, but that isn't specific enough for your purpose. That's kind of a description of what your department is, but not really what it does. So this is an opportunity to communicate that, to help everybody get on the same page, and to give feedback and to kind of craft that to make sure it does accurately reflect who you are and what you do. So actually, I'm going to come back to this in a moment. Let me show you some examples. So I provided a template, a strategic plan template that you can use, and it's going to be a very simple, straightforward document. It has your mission. Your mission itself should be no more than a few sentences. Your vision, same thing, no more than a few sentences. I recommend with your core values, focusing on 5 to 7 core values. So that's one thing I really want to emphasize is you don't want to have too many core values, because you really want to focus on your highest values. I mean, we all have lots of values, but it's good to focus on just a few to kind of guide us that we can take pride in. So you can enter those in there, and then your long-term program goals. So I didn't put I actually put the you may have long-term goals covering multiple program areas. You put that at bottom, but here are your long-term program goals, and then having your 5 to 7 long-term program goals, or maybe 3 to 5, or how many ever for each particular program area that you've identified. And we've covered the process of developing your program areas and goals in prior modules. And I've also developed a sample of what this could look like. And this will give you more information on kind of the language of what mission, vision can look like. So I stole the mission from the San Ynez Chumash Environmental Office, which I used to be the director of. I helped develop this while I was working there. And so the mission in this fictitious strategic plan is the mission of this environmental department is, it is our mission to responsibly manage natural resources for sustained social, cultural, spiritual, and economic prosperity. So, like I said, instead of just saying we're a tribal environmental department that handles environmental issues for the tribe, I mean, that may not be all that you do. So that actually may be too narrow. In this case, we felt like we did beyond, we went beyond that. We don't just manage the tribe's environmental resources, we responsibly manage the tribe's environmental resources. And we do so for sustained social, cultural, spiritual, and economic prosperity. So it's not just about saving the environment, it's also making sure that we are supporting the tribe socially, we are making sure we are respecting and integrating the tribe's culture. There's a spiritual aspect to what is being done, so there's a respect for the tribe's spirituality and its religious traditions, and that economics is a big aspect of what we have going on as well. So not just making sure we have the finances to support our environmental programs, but that our environmental programs support the economic prosperity of the tribe as a whole. So that may involve things like sustainability. The vision for the Chumash Environmental Office is that our vision is a Chumash legacy of environmental stewardship, exemplifying sustainability for communities throughout the world. And that's really what we wanted to be. We wanted to create a legacy for the Chumash community, but also to be a model for not just tribal communities, but for small communities throughout not just in the U.S., but the entire world. And that is an inspirational vision. That's something that if we are 100% successful, that's what we would be. We would have a legacy and we would be an example. And that's achievable. It doesn't necessarily have to be achievable. A vision can be something that's, it's a bit of a pie in the sky, but this is something too, if we achieve it, the work doesn't stop. Like we still need to continue to work hard to continue to achieve that. So I came up with a series of core values. So I came up with 5 core values. They're kind of random, but one is dependability. So what I like to do for core values is just have, instead of just a word, is also to have a little bit of a statement of what that actually means, because different words mean different things to different people. And as you actually, if you go through a strategic planning retreat and you get the results from your questionnaire about the values that people wrote, then you could actually list those values and have people kind of look at each other's, and they can kind of vote and decide which values kind of represent what they do. Everybody can go through the process of selecting maybe 4 or 5 of the highest values. You can kind of wordsmith them, personalize them. So just some examples. In dependability, we are hardworking, follow through, and always do our best. Continuous improvement, always striving to be better, is in our DNA. So, continuous improvement is going to mean different things to different people. So this kind of personalizes it. One tribe that I've done some work with had one of their core values was passion, and like the little tagline was, "We believe that we believe that what we do is friggin' cool." Which is great. It's like that's very personal to people in the office. So you want these core values to be personal to the people who are doing this work on a daily basis, that they resonate with these things and they remember them. That saying that our passion and that what we do, like we believe what we do is pretty friggin' cool, is something that people are going to remember. It's emotional, and it makes, just even saying that, kind of makes people happy. And then you have your series of long-term program goals. So, maybe your 2 to 5 or so goals, over high-level goals. So for air resources, control, reduce, and eliminate indoor air quality pollution and associated human health impacts. Same thing with outdoor air quality. There's some on climate change. There's some goals on education outreach. Oh, and I put some footnotes in here if you wanted to go to the Chumash Environmental Office's mission and vision. There's some goals for general, administrative, and financial. So if you're kind of struggling with coming up with goals or figuring out what goals are, feel free to go to this document, go to the ETEP catalog that I've developed, that spreadsheet that's available in Google Docs, and you can see some examples of what some goals would be for different areas. So there's an example that you can look at and use. All right, so I kind of want to just talk about briefly about the kind of the human element of strategic planning and management. It's really important to gain like this. This is a process. So really, you're trying to develop a plan, but the more important aspect of it is the process of especially obtaining stakeholder input and involvement. This process is an opportunity for you to create buy-in and alignment among the people who are doing these things. You can help create a sense of respect for one another and a sense of belonging to something greater than oneself. So really, it's important to include the key people who are involved in this. You definitely want to include the environmental department employees at all levels. So, from your technicians and your field workers to the director and your board members, if you have an environmental board. Those are all, you want to have everybody involved and feel like they have a voice, that their opinions are respected. And then when everybody sees what everybody else has going on, there's going to be new ideas. There's going to be synergy that's going to happen. A strategic plan and going through this process provides a container for new ideas and concerns. So these concerns are just as valuable as ideas. You want to be aware of what the concerns are in terms of accomplishing your goals, or what are some concerns out there in the environment that you may have to actually deal with. And by having this space, this area for you to discuss the ideas and concerns, you can actually address them proactively rather than reactively. Strategic planning allows you to establish a clear and consistent message, a clear and consistent process. It does actually help you establish a clear and consistent message as well, but helps you establish a clear and consistent process for evaluating new ideas. So instead of having the squeaky wheel, the dominant personality, the person who's most aggressive, be able to get their ideas across and acted upon. Having a strategic plan, make sure that you have an area where everybody, whether they're aggressive or passive, whether they're dominant or maybe a little quieter, they have a place to share their ideas, and then those ideas themselves are evaluated in the context of the mission, vision, values, goals, and other objectives. So in deciding whether or not to pursue a new idea and turn that into a new objective, you're going to look at all these other things and see whether and how it fits. So that's an objective process. So not an objective process for evaluating your objectives. Objective in the sense that it's not subjective. It's not just somebody's opinion. It's not reactive. It's not emotional. It's something where people feel like they can stand behind. They feel like it's fair. It's a fair process. Strategic planning gives you an opportunity to communicate and model commitment to having your mission, vision, and values. So it's something where it kind of can create a higher purpose for everybody in the office, create a sense of shared meaning and purpose. And hopefully one that's inspirational, so everybody feels like that they're working towards something that they believe in. And it can clarify direction and expectations, so people know what the goals, the objectives, and the performance requirements are. You can discuss these things in the context of a strategic plan. So you sit down with your staff members on a one-on-one basis, and you go through what are the objectives for the upcoming year, like what are you expected to accomplish in terms of accomplishing our goals. And one thing that's particularly helpful is you're going to have some staff members that are particularly good at accomplishing things and some that are maybe not so good at accomplishing things. And because people tend to work in silos, they may, the person who's not particularly good at accomplishing things may be thinking they're doing a great job. But if they can see the full strategic plan and all the objectives and what other people are working on, they have a benchmark of, what other people are able to accomplish within the same period of time, and that may motivate them to work harder and more effectively. It also may help them collaborate with those other people as well in accomplishing mutual goals and objectives. Okay, so you really, this is a process to include, it's a process that allows relationship building. Um, I think one thing that's particularly helpful is including the people, the relationship building, interpersonal matters. So not just focusing on the specific objectives, the environmental issues going on out there, but the cultural aspects of your department. So not cultural meaning like Native American culture, but culture meaning the behaviors of and actions of the people within your department and your office, how you treat each other, um, how people are performing, how people communicate, what the mood is, what the mentality is. So it's an opportunity to kind of discuss these things and address these things as well. Values is a particularly helpful prompt in a way to kind of begin to address department cultural issues uh, and opportunities, but the goals and the objectives can be as well. And I think that it's going to be helpful to develop specific goals and objectives that address those behavioral challenges, those cultural things, those values that you aspire to and that you all would like to see be a part of how you operate. So I already showed you the strategic plan template and the sample strategic plan. So I'm actually going to go into, after this now, I'm going to go into, okay, so just one more thing, some advanced strategic planning and management. This is really kind of the basics. I gave a step-by-step process for doing basic strategic planning, which I think is more than enough for most organizations. If you do too much, you can find that it ends up being counterproductive. You're not able to accomplish necessarily. It just gets too unwieldy. But you can get. I'll just kind of go through each of these. So you could do organizational and program specific assessments. So you know, doing the formal baseline needs assessment for your entire program is an option. Doing one for each program or each organizational unit is an option as well. Really looking at and evaluating performance and performance metrics is something that you can integrate into this process. You can do something called gap analysis and planning. So one thing in doing your SWOT analysis and identifying your weaknesses and your threats and stuff like that is you may, well actually what you can do is you can also look at your goals and see, okay, you can identify where you're at right now versus where you want to be, and then you can do an analysis of how to get there. But I really think that that's kind of embedded in the process anyways. That's what your objectives are about. They're filling in that gap of getting from where you're at to where you want to be. You can do change planning and management as well, risk management, risk assessment, planning and management, cultural analysis. Like you can do more intense cultural analyses. You can do action program initiative planning, which really the strategic work plan does. You can do contingency planning as well, so you can you can come up with, you can identify possible things that can happen. That let's say you lose your funding, let's say you lose staff members, you can do some planning around that, and you can do strategy mapping. So these are all more advanced concepts. I haven't done some of these myself. I'm familiar with some of them. Some of them are already integrated in the process. I mean, action planning is definitely one. The gap analysis, I believe so. There's a certain level of performance metrics involved in the processes we've been going through. And definitely doing an organizational assessment is part of it too. There's some cultural analysis and going through the values, but it's not as in depth as you could go. And then, I haven't really done much along the lines of risk assessment, planning, or management. But, I think that these are also things like you can do later as well. So I'd say, I recommend focusing on the basic strategic planning process. And if it goes really well, people are really invested, really excited, and it seems like it's worthwhile, then maybe you can do more, uh, you know, maybe you can do more later on. So with the strategic planning meetings and retreats too, this is something where you may want to do this on an annual basis. You may want to get your staff together for a strategic planning retreat to review and revise your strategic plan each year. I actually highly recommend that. I mean, it's something where you may say, well, that a whole day and going through this process takes a lot of time. You really can't spend time in any more there's no single thing you can do that's a greater use of your time than strategic planning and management. I mean, if you do too much of it to to the extent that you can't accomplish your goals and objectives, that's an issue. But if 10, if 10 to even 25% of your time is focused on strategic planning and management, that is a very valuable use of your time because it means the other 75% of your time is very efficient and effective. You are like a straight line. You are getting to what you need to do in the most efficient, effective manner possible. And if you do less than that, then you're going to be like that line I showed at the beginning. You'll be bouncing all over the place. You may be accomplishing things, but those things you're accomplishing may not be what you actually want to accomplish. If you sat down and actually thought about and discussed and reevaluated and reassessed on a regular basis, you may decide that you actually need to go in a different direction than you were actually going. And it's better to kind of be proactive about that than reactive. Okay, so before moving on and doing some more examples of preparing an ETEP strategic work plan, just want to see, are there any questions? Feel free to enter them into the box or raise your hand. I can unmute you if you have any. I don't see any questions, so I guess I'll move on. You can feel free to continue to ask some. You can ask them later as well. But that's strategic planning in a nutshell. I feel like I've given enough information to help you kind of get a basic understanding, and I've given you a process you can go through and you can even implement right now that complements your ETEP development process, which I think if you're going to go through this process, you might as well do strategic planning as well. There's lots of overlap. Doing the strategic planning part of this is not going to add really that much more work than going through the rest of the ETEP strategic planning process. Okay, so let's go back to, I want to continue to walk through developing an ETEP strategic work plan. So I was working on this last time using an example. I'll pull this back up. So here's the sample or the walkthrough example I've been using that I just keep adding on to. And so just to kind of reiterate the process for developing an ETEP, you have kind of your initial scoping is step number one. Step number two is going to be selecting your team and identifying and engaging your stakeholders. Step number three is going to be your information gathering and review process, also known as your baseline needs assessment. Step number four is going to be selecting your priority program areas, which you may already done as part of the scoping process. 5 is identifying and selecting your long-term goals. 6 is doing the same for your intermediate objectives and milestones. 7 is preparing the framework for your ETEP strategic work plan. So developing your spreadsheet or your Word document, putting in the program areas that you want. And then 8 is inserting the information, which, this is really the full process of developing the ETEP strategic work plan, which is going to meet the requirements of component 1 of the gap guidance for ETEP, for the ETEP requirements. So these were the information gathering review processes. So identifying and logging the information sources, so making sure you keep track of what documents you've come across. This is that document right here. So as you add information to this, you are going to make sure you keep track of those. Make sure you keeping track of what you requested. And then reviewing each information source, looking for possible program areas, goals, and objectives, and reviewing and recording the findings as you're going through your review, either in doing that into an intermediate research document and or the actual just straight into your ETEP strategic work plan. Okay, so let's do a little more of that. So when I'm working on this and I'm populating my ETEP strategic work plan, so actually let's, right here, I've already populated the description of the priority program areas. I just cut and paste these from the catalog that I've showed you. So the catalog is available for you online. This is how I can see it, but you can download this as a spreadsheet. So when you look at this when you look at this catalog in the, let's make this a little larger. When you look at this catalog online, like, you will not see it like this. You'll see, like, a screen. You won't have the ability to sort and filter, but you can download it as a spreadsheet, and then you can sort and filter from there. So the program description areas came from here, and you can describe your program areas however you want. This is just, and you should, you shouldn't just copy and paste. You should definitely be reading these and make sure that they are appropriate. Tweak them, change them, completely revise them, overhaul them, come up with new ones on your own. But that's where I got these from. I may have tweaked them a little bit. So in this fictitious tribal environmental plan, we have 5 program areas: air, education outreach. There's general waste. There's general, which is administrative and financial. There's waste management and water resources. So what I did actually is earlier I populated the long-term program area goals, and in this case I actually just took them from that sample strategic plan that we had developed before. So let me just show you that again. And this kind of shows you how they cross over. So this was the strategic plan template. If we scroll down here, we see the long-term program area goals. And these are the same exact 4 goals for air resources that are right here. So all these were just copy and pasted into here, and that's the bridge between the two. All right, so scrolling down here, I've been populating this. So when I'm doing this, the first thing I start with typically is the existing work plans for the existing years. So I'm going to go back to some samples that I've been working off of before, that have been provided to me or that I've found online. So in this case, this one's from the Isleta tribe. And I just want to pull up a few more examples from here to include. So I made some notes of which ones to pull. So in this case, let's go down to, so 2.1 says conduct, I'll make this a little larger. 2.1 says conduct background research and apply for 1 federal grant and 1 non-federal grant per year to support or advance the tribe's mission to protect environmental, natural resources, so on and so forth. So this is really this is about funding. And you want to definitely make sure that you have objectives in here to pursue funding. This is one of those standard objectives that I talked about before, one of those common repetitive ones that you can have very standard language from that are a bit broader, that will encompass that. So you can use that same language in your worksheet. So let me go back to here to pull this up because I have some of the sample language in here. So you can use the exact language you have in your work plan. I think it can be a little detailed at times. I'm going to use the language that I have here. So identify, secure, and pursue funding. Let's copy and paste this. So identify, pursue, and secure funding for 2017 ETEP. Let's just say air resources program area objectives. I think it's worth putting an objective for each program area, because you're going to have, just as you have an objective within your GAP work plan to pursue funding, you likely have an objective in your Clean Water Act 106 work plan to pursue funding, and probably your 319 one. So I just say focus on your program area. So in this case, let's do air resources. And since I know this is a repetitive objective, so this is 2016, I know this is a repetitive objective. I'm just going to, let's see, tribe. In this case, you definitely, you want to include your capacity indicators as well. So in this case, they've already indicated an associated capacity indicator, which is B.8.3. So I'll put that in there, B.8.3. the tribe's going to be pursuing funding. This is air, and this is going to be, I'm going to have a category called funding for this. So in this case, I'm going to put 17, 18, 19. And so notice in this case, anytime I'm pursuing a funding objective, I'm doing it in the following year. So in 2016, I'm going to pursue funding for 2017 objectives. So this one isn't quite as, this one isn't quite as easy as a copy and paste as the other ones are. So I will copy and paste it right there, but in this case, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this to 18, change this to 19, and change this to 20. Okay, and then then I'm going to, just for filtering cases, and then I'm going to, so I now have all of my funding ones for air. I also want to put my funding stuff for my other objectives as well. So, all the other program areas too. So I'm going to copy and paste this here, and I'm going to change this to water. Change this to water. Change this to water. And then this as well. And then you want to go over here and change these two. Drag these down. Okay, so now, I would just repeat this for all program areas, and like in 2 minutes, I can have all the funding objectives for all my program areas entered into my work plan. So let's go back here. And so, as I'm doing this, I might, I entered this one in. I kind of changed it to focus on particular areas. But I knew I was going to have to include it for those other program areas in the years. So while I was doing it, I just figured why not just do it for all years. And if you want sampling, so if you have like a more, like, if you have like lots of, if you have longer sentences and lots of words, you want to make them more concise, you can just kind of reword this some. Another idea is, you can go into the catalog and just see what objectives are listed in the catalog. You can use some of that language. So let's go here, let's go to objectives. Let's just type in funding. So search a few of these. So there's different area, there's different statements of pursuing funding. You got to use all these with a grain of salt. So, this is kind of one I like right here. So identify, pursue, and secure funding. That's the language I typically like to use. And you just change the subject area. So these are all kind of somewhat objective related examples, and then you have some that I'm entering into the spreadsheet as well. Okay, so let's see. So 2.4 was another one I had flagged out. This was developing a watershed management plan. So if that's an objective for 2016, let's put that in there too. Nope. Wrong spreadsheet. So I don't believe that that's in there yet. So we already did actually. We reviewed that and include that. So develop a watershed-based management plan was a 2016 objective that was already included. And I indicated where that source of that objective came from. So, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. I would actually go through every single task on here one by one, and I would either combine, and I would make sure that all these activities are covered as objectives in the ETEP Strategic Work Plan. And then when I know the repetitive activities, I'm going to repeat them for the upcoming years. So I'll do it for 2016, 17, 18, and 19. I'll add in the capacity indicator numbers. Also, I already entered in the goals, but you may choose to get some of your goals from here as well. So long-term outcomes are goals. So developing knowledge and experience necessary to build and maintain an effective environmental protection program is a goal. Healthier outdoor air is a goal. Healthy habitat for plants and wildlife is a goal. The Pueblo having its own tribal NEPA process, that's a goal. So those things could be entered as goals if you want. Okay, so that's an example of doing an internal document or, one of your existing work plans. Another thing you may do is, let's say you have your, let's say you have a strategic plan. So I'm pulling up one that it's the one that I want to use. So in this case, I may pull out some goals from my tribe's strategic plan. So if the tribe has a strategic plan, you can go through this and see if they have natural resources related goals. So I'll look in the table of contents and I'll just, I'm going through this real quick. Right here I see 5.2, there is a land, natural resources, cultural preservation, special services on page 31. So let's go to page 31 and let's go into the goals and objectives here. And then I may look at here and say research, develop, and adopt air quality standards, and initiate the installation, I think it's installation of monitoring stations by a tribe within its boundaries. So these are actually two objectives. So research, develop, and adopt air quality standards is an objective. And so, in considering putting this in your plan, you can either say, okay, that's an objective we want to pursue, and let's say we're going to pursue this in 2018. Or if it was one that you didn't necessarily know when you were going to pursue it, or whether you might pursue it outside the 5-year period, then you maybe could put possible just to keep it on your radar. But clearly it's a tribal goal, and you got to decide when and how to pursue it. So I'd put tribe, I'd put air, I'd put, for this, I'd put regulating, I think is kind of my category I like to use. It's not repetitive. I do have sample objectives that are like this that would have the capacity indicator number. So then you need to go to the gap guidance and find the capacity indicator number as well. Let me see if I can find that online. It's just already in the catalog. So air quality standards. So develop and promulgate air quality standards. Actually has a capacity indicator number C.3.12. I probably have this listed a few times. Establish a program to meaningfully participate in air quality management programs, so on and so forth. Obtain TAS for Clean Air Act authorities, e.g., and then right here, develop ambient air quality standards. So this one seems like pretty straightforward, C.3.22. So I make sure I have that in there as well. And it's something where adopt standards. It may be a different objective. As you're considering this, you may want to pursue TAS for that. So pursue TAS, or treatment of state status, for tribal air quality standards. And I may pull up the gap guidance just to make sure that C.3.22 is appropriate. There may be multiple ones. Nope. So tribe has developed and promulgated air quality standards. Let's see, is there a TS? Well, I would definitely at least include that. I think there's another one for TAS as well. But anyway, so C.3.22 is associated with that, and that would be the logical. I mean, you probably would do this simultaneously. In fact, I would actually say that you would probably pursue the TAS for developing air quality standards before actually developing the air quality standards. So I'm actually going to reverse that. Let's say 2018, we're going to do that. 2019, We're going to actually develop the air quality standards. Okay, so, there's goals and objectives possibly in a strategic planning document. So you kind of go through here. Installing a monitoring station, that's a separate objective. It may be separate objectives for separate air pollutants. So let's close that. Let's see. I mentioned the gap guidance itself, going through this. I think it's worth scanning this entire document. Let's go down to some water ones. So scanning the entire document and highlighting what you want to pursue, and then deciding whether or not and how it fits in here. So in this case, let's look at these and see which. So let's say the tribe has 106 funding right now, but the tribe doesn't have 319 funding. So the tribe wants to submit an eligibility package and become eligible for 319 funding. So I've already rewritten this elsewhere, but you could just, if you wanted to, you could just copy and paste this into here and reword it. So prepare and submit an eligibility package for Clean Water Act 319, including a TAS package and non-point source assessment report and management plan. Those are actually different things. So you got to be careful when you look at these things. Make sure you're not, doing too much. Like developing a non-point source management plan. So preparing a non-point source management plan is a separate objective as well. You may not want to do that until you get the funding. So this was D.3.16 in the gap guidance. And so was this. And, so you decide, okay, well, this year we want to do that so we can get funding for next year. And then if we get funding for next year, we will prepare that plan. So let's do tribe. This is obviously both of the tribes doing. These are both water related objectives. And this is funding related because that 319 funding, or 319 is typically for funding. And then this would be planning, I guess. Okay. So something you could also do is go to an outside source. So I've kind of done, internal documents. There's management plans you can go to. So let's do a draft of this. Let's just pull out and just see an objective from here. All right, so real quick, I just scan these things really quickly. Current practices. Current practices are objectives. Like what you're doing currently, you need to list as current objectives. So your program administration management, let's go page 32 and see what's under there. Let's fine, get this higher. Okay, so page 32. Let's see, program administration and management. Even administering the solid waste program could be listed as an objective. I like to be a little more specific at times, but right here, long-term goals. This is actually an objective, I would say. Updating policies and procedures. So you could just have one that says simply like administer waste management programs. I think that's actually not specific enough. So let's say update waste management program policies and procedures. Let's be a little more specific than that. Let's say let's update transfer station policies and procedures. And we want to do that in 2017. We'd have to go find the capacity indicator associated with that, if there is one. There isn't always necessarily. This is going to be administering. And so, I've included that as an objective. If you're going to do that on an annual basis, then, maybe you put review and update transfer station policies and procedures. And in fact, in this case, you would then just, let's do this. Nope. I hate when I do that. Instead of hitting Control C, I hit Control V, and then I paste it across the entire spreadsheet. So it's thinking right now. It's going to take a moment. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this for 2016, 17, 18, and 19 and just repeat it, because if this is something you're going to do on an annual basis, you're going to have deliverables, new updated procedures. I think that's a good practice anyways. So this is actually a good way to keep important things that don't happen on your radar and make sure they actually do happen. So as an environmental director, if you want your transfer station policies and procedures to be okay. I'm going to have to close this guy out. Ah, jeez. Okay. So, sorry about this. All right, so that's basically kind of walked you through some more of the process of completing your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. All right, so let's jump back. I'm going a little bit over time. I apologize. I try to be a little more respectful of your time. So I wanted to continue some of that demonstration so you can kind of just get a feel for what the process is, where the information comes from. Hopefully, well, I believe that should be helpful. For the next steps, please do respond to the doodle poll for scheduling the next module. As I did mention in the beginning, I'm planning on holding that next week. I'm going to select a date and time by the end of Friday. So if you can complete that, I'll send another reminder on that tomorrow morning. There'll be, the same assignments from last time, except in this case, if you want to do strategic planning, you can complete that strategic planning questionnaire. And, if you do the one online, then I will forward you the results. Otherwise, you can just use the one that's in the folder. And then I will send another email with updated assignments and materials soon. So please take a moment to provide another evaluation, any feedback, any questions. I think questions are good as well. And appreciate your time.